Some coins were so hideous they literally destroyed public confidence in entire monetary systems, and this is absolutely true. From designs that look like tombstones to portraits so bad they earn nicknames like Susan B. Agony, these numismatic nightmares prove that sometimes, even governments can create disasters that last for decades. Fun fact that'll blow your mind. The US Mint actually received so many complaints about one particular coin that they created an entirely new department just to handle the hate mail. We're talking thousands of letters from angry citizens demanding answers, and the Mint's response? They blame the public for not understanding modern artistic vision. So today, we're counting down the absolute worst. The coins that made grown collectors weep. The designs that prove sometimes there really is such a thing as too ugly to spend. Buckle up, numismatists, because we're about to explore the dark side of monetary history. In 1866, the United States Mint was celebrating their brilliant new 5-cent piece. Chief engraver James Longacre stands proudly behind his latest creation, the Shield nickel, convinced he's just revolutionized American coinage. Meanwhile, the American Journal of Numismatics takes one look at this coin and delivers a brutal verdict: a curiously ugly device. Spoiler alert. The journal was absolutely right. The design problem started with the shield itself. Instead of looking strong and protective, it looked more like a tombstone. Art critic Wharton took one look and said it resembled a tombstone with willows. And honestly, once you see it, you can't unsee it. 13 stars surround this monument to bad design, but instead of representing the colonies with dignity, they look like they're mourning the death of good taste. But wait, it gets worse. From day one, the shield nickel dies started cracking. Longacre's intricate design was too complex for 1866 minting technology. The dies couldn't handle the stress, so they'd crack, creating coins with mysterious lines running through the design. These die cracks made an already ugly coin even uglier, like a cracking tombstone. Mint workers quickly developed their own unofficial nickname for the shield nickel: the mistake. Think about that. The people actually making these coins knew they were producing garbage. The public hated them immediately. Newspapers across the country called them ugly within months. The Philadelphia Inquirer wrote that the new nickel looked like a funeral arrangement for American coinage. The American Journal of Numismatics didn't hold back, calling it the nadir of American coin design, a curiously ugly device. But Longacre and Mint officials, they doubled down. Instead of admitting the obvious problems, they blamed the public for not understanding modern artistic principles. Sound familiar? For 17 long years, from 1866 to 1883, America inflicted this numismatic nightmare on its citizens. International publications used the shield nickel as an example of American artistic failure. Even Canadian journals, and Canadians are polite about everything, described it as regrettably unattractive. When the Liberty Head nickel finally replaced it in 1883, the relief was palpable. The American Journal of Numismatics celebrated, at last, American coinage can hold its head high again. Here's the plot twist. Today, shield nickels are actually valuable, not because they're beautiful, but because they're historically significant examples of spectacular design failure. Modern coin grading services have special notes for shield nickels: die crack variety, weak strike example, typical poor centering, descriptions that would be insults for any other coin. The shield nickel's legacy lives on in numismatic education as a textbook example of what not to do. Sometimes the best teachers are the worst examples. And the shield nickel was definitely the worst example of 19th century American coin design. When you see a shield nickel today, think of it as an expensive education. Every die crack represents a lesson learned about what American coinage should never be again. And that, fellow numismatists, is why the shield nickel earned its place as number 10 on our countdown. Number 9, the silver 3-cent piece, the coin that made the shield nickel look like a masterpiece. In 1851, the US government thought, you know what Americans really need? A 3-cent coin. This brilliant idea came from first-class postage costing 3 cents, because apparently carrying 3 pennies was too complicated. What they created became the most pointless, most forgettable, and yes, one of the ugliest coins in American history. Chief engraver James Longacre, fresh off his shield nickel disaster, decided simple was better. What he created was so plain that expert Dennis Tucker would later describe it as plain and small, which, from a professional historian, is basically calling it aggressively boring. The design featured a generic six-pointed star, not because it had symbolic meaning, but because Longacre ran out of ideas. Inside this star was a tiny shield with Liberty curved around it, so small you needed a magnifying glass to read it. The result was a blob inside a star, creating what critics called visual anarchy in miniature. The reverse was worse, a giant Roman numeral 3, surrounded by United States of America and 3 cents, because apparently the Roman numeral wasn't clear enough. It had all the artistic sophistication of a price tag, but here's the real problem. The coin was tiny, only 14 millimeters, smaller than a modern dime. People lost them constantly. Try fishing a coin that small out of your pocket wearing winter gloves. Merchants complained that customers would drop them and spend 5 minutes crawling around looking for their 3 cents. The public reaction was, well, there wasn't much reaction. And that's the problem. The silver 3-cent piece was so unremarkable that people barely noticed it existed. It was the numismatic equivalent of beige wallpaper. Cornelius Vermeulen, one of the most respected numismatic critics, labeled it among the ugliest US coins ever made. For him to single out the 3-cent piece as particularly ugly, after looking at the shield nickel and other disasters, well, that's saying something. The denomination was awkward. 3 cents wasn't useful for most transactions. Bank tellers hated them because they were easy to lose and impossible to stack. One Philadelphia bank banned them after a series of counting errors. International reaction was mostly confusion. European numismatists couldn't understand why America needed a 3-cent denomination, and they certainly couldn't understand why it needed to be so ugly. British publications described it as puzzling in both purpose and appearance. By the 1870s, mintages had dropped dramatically. The public had simply stopped using them. When the Coinage Act of 1873 finally killed it off, the reaction was nothing. No protests, no petitions. It just quietly disappeared, unmourned and unremembered. Modern collectors treat them as historical curiosities rather than treasures. Auction descriptions use terms like historically significant despite its plain appearance, polite ways of saying ugly but necessary. Dennis Tucker's assessment, plain and small, remains the definitive description. In 3 words, he captured everything wrong with this coin: its lack of visual interest, its impractical size, its complete absence of charisma. 22 years of production, and the silver 3-cent piece's main achievement was proving America didn't need a 3-cent coin. Sometimes the most important coins teach us what not to do. Today, when collectors encounter one, the most common reaction is, oh right, these existed. That's not the reaction you want to your nation's currency, but it's what this coin earned through aggressive mediocrity. And that's why the silver 3-cent piece earned number 9 on our countdown. Number 8, the Susan B. Anthony dollar, the feminist coin that became a national embarrassment. In 1979, America decided to honor women's rights with the worst coin design in decades. The public immediately nicknamed it Susan B. Agony, and even feminists were embarrassed. This wasn't just bad design, this was a coin that actively insulted the woman it was supposed to honor. The problem started with the portrait itself. Susan B. Anthony deserved dignity, strength, revolutionary spirit. What she got was an awkward shoulder-length portrait that made her look uncomfortable and constipated. The engraver somehow managed to capture none of her historical significance and all of the artistic limitations of 1970s coin design. But here's where it gets truly catastrophic. The coin looked identical to a quarter, same size, same color, same weight. Vending machines couldn't tell them apart. Cashiers couldn't tell them apart. The American public definitely couldn't tell them apart. Chaos erupted immediately. Vending machines started rejecting them or giving quarter change for dollar purchases. People would hand cashiers what they thought were quarters, only to discover they just spent 4 times what they intended. Banks reported thousands of complaints from customers who'd accidentally given away Susan B. Anthony dollars as quarters. The technical problems made everything worse. Off-center strikes were common, creating coins that looked even more amateurish. One YouTube video shows a Susan B. Anthony dollar struck off-center on a Lincoln cent. proving that even the mint's quality control was confused about what they were making. Retailers started refusing to accept them. The Postal Service tried to force their use, but customers rebelled. By 1981, the mint had stockpiled over 500 million unwanted Susan B. Anthonys. That's 500 million coins that nobody wanted to use. The government's solution? Force them back into production in 1999 for the new dollar coin program. The public's reaction? Absolute fury. 20 years later, and they were still trying to get rid of the same terrible design. Contemporary criticism was brutal. Coin publications called it the quarter that thinks it's a dollar. Feminist groups complained that honoring Susan B. Anthony with such a poorly designed coin was more insulting than not honoring her at all. The coin failed so spectacularly that it poisoned public opinion against dollar coins for decades. When the Sacagawea dollar launched in 2000, the first question everyone asked was, is this another Susan B. Anthony situation? Today, Susan B. Anthony dollars are worth exactly $1. Nobody collects them for beauty. Nobody saves them for investment. They're just reminders of how good intentions can create numismatic disasters. The Susan B. Anthony dollar proved that honoring historical figures means nothing if you can't design a coin worth using, making it number 8 on our countdown. Number 7. The 1995 Special Olympics dollar, the commemorative coin that managed to insult everyone involved. In 1995, the US Mint decided to honor the Special Olympics with a commemorative dollar. This should have been a celebration, a tribute to courage and determination, a coin that captured the spirit of overcoming challenges. Instead, they created what Reddit users repeatedly call the absolute ugliest coin the US Mint ever made. Think about that for a moment. The shield nickel existed. The Susan B. Anthony dollar was still fresh in everyone's memory, and yet collectors singled out this coin as the absolute worst. That takes spectacular artistic failure. The design problems were immediate and obvious. The portrait looked like a cartoon character, not a dignified representation of Special Olympics athletes. The composition defied basic artistic principles, cramming symbols and text together without any sense of hierarchy or focus. Elements fought each other for attention, creating visual chaos that hurt to look at. But here's what made this truly insulting. The Special Olympics deserved better. These athletes overcome incredible challenges, demonstrate extraordinary courage, inspire millions of people worldwide. They deserved a coin that reflected their dignity and achievements. Instead, they got artwork that looked like it was designed by a committee of bureaucrats who'd never seen a Special Olympics event. The symbolism made no sense. Design elements were scattered across the coin's surface without any logical connection, like someone had thrown Special Olympics imagery into a blender and stamped whatever came out. Professional artists looking at this coin couldn't identify a focal point, a theme, or even basic compositional structure. Coin forums exploded with criticism. Dismal design became the polite description. Collectors who supported the Special Olympics cause were embarrassed to own examples. One forum user wrote, "I wanted to support the cause, but I can't display this coin. It's too ugly to show anyone." The Mint's response was predictable. They defended their artistic vision and blamed critics for not understanding commemorative coin design. But the market spoke clearly. Sales were disappointing, and secondary market values immediately dropped below issue price. Contemporary numismatic publications struggled to find anything positive to say. Reviews focused on the coin's historical significance and important cause, carefully avoiding any mention of aesthetic merit. When professional critics can't say anything nice about a coin's appearance, you know it's a disaster. The irony is devastating. The Special Olympics represents triumph over adversity, excellence despite challenges, the power of human determination. The coin representing this movement became a symbol of artistic failure and bureaucratic incompetence. Today, the 1995 Special Olympics dollar serves as a reminder that good intentions don't excuse bad art, earning its place as number 7 on our countdown. Number 6, the barber coins. 24 years of artistic drought that made American money boring. In 1892, Charles Barber became chief engraver of the US Mint and immediately set about creating the most uninspired coin designs in American history. For nearly a quarter century, from 1892 to 1916, American dimes, quarters, and half dollars featured his aggressively mediocre artwork. Critics called them bland and uninspired from day one, and that was being generous. Barber's approach was simple. Take one basic design and copy it across 3 denominations. The Liberty head looked mass-produced, like it rolled off an assembly line rather than emerging from artistic vision. The eagles appeared to be sleeping, lacking any sense of power or majesty that you'd expect from America's national bird. The problem wasn't that Barber was incompetent, it was that he was uninspired. His coins were technically competent but artistically dead. They were the numismatic equivalent of beige wallpaper. Present, but utterly forgettable. No creativity, no innovation, no soul. Contemporary criticism was immediate and sustained. Numismatic publications regularly savaged Barber's work, not for technical failures, but for artistic bankruptcy. The American Journal of Numismatics wrote in 1895 that Barber's coins represented the triumph of bureaucratic thinking over artistic vision. Collectors of the era begged for anything different. Letters to the mint demanded new designs, new artists, new anything to break the monotony of Barber's cookie-cutter approach. One prominent collector wrote that Barber's coins were so predictably boring that they make counting change a depressing experience. International reaction was equally harsh. European numismatic publications used Barber coins as examples of American artistic stagnation. French journals suggested that America had abandoned any pretense of monetary artistry. British publications wondered if Americans had given up on beautiful currency entirely. The real tragedy was the lost opportunity. 24 years is nearly a generation, an entire era of American coinage that could have reflected the nation's growing confidence and cultural development. Instead, Americans carried around coins that looked like they were designed by committee, stamped with the enthusiasm of a parking meter. By 1915, pressure for change had become overwhelming. Artists, collectors, and even government officials were demanding an end to the Barber era. The arrival of new designers in 1916 was celebrated like liberation from artistic tyranny. Adolph Weinmann's Walking Liberty half-dollar and Mercury dime, introduced in 1916, showed Americans what their coins could look like with actual artistic vision. The contrast was shocking. 24 years of mediocrity followed by designs that are still considered masterpieces today. Modern collectors appreciate Barber coins for their historical significance, but nobody pretends they're beautiful. Auction descriptions focus on rarity and condition, carefully avoiding aesthetic evaluation. They're important for completing typesets, not for displaying artistic merit. The Barber era proved that artistic competence isn't enough, that boring can be just as damaging as ugly, earning these coins number 6 on our countdown. Number 5, the Eisenhower dollar, the presidential coin that looked perpetually angry. In 1971, America decided to honor President Dwight D. Eisenhower with a new dollar coin. This should have been a tribute to a war hero, a celebration of leadership and service. Instead, they created a coin so uncomfortable to look at that people nicknamed it the Constipated President Dollar. The problem started with Eisenhower's portrait. Frank Gasparo's engraving made the former president look rigid, uncomfortable, and inexplicably stern. This was a man who led the D-Day invasion and served 2 terms as president, but the coin made him look like he was suffering from indigestion. But the portrait was just the beginning. The reverse featured an eagle landing on the moon, commemorating the Apollo 11 mission. Sounds patriotic, right? Wrong. This eagle looked absolutely furious, like it was about to attack the moon rather than land on it peacefully. The fierce pose made no sense for a space exploration tribute. Reddit discussions about the Eisenhower dollar consistently focus on what users called the fierce eagle problem. Why was this eagle so angry? What had the moon done to deserve such aggression? The design raised questions that had no good answers. The practical problems were equally severe. The coin was enormous, larger and heavier than most people wanted to carry. At 38.1 millimeters and 22.68 grams, it felt more like a weapon than currency. Pockets sagged, purses strained, and cashiers complained about the weight during daily handling. Banks couldn't give them away. Within months of release, financial institutions were stockpiling unwanted Eisenhower dollars. The public overwhelmingly preferred paper dollars, which were lighter, smaller, and didn't feature angry eagles or constipated presidents. Casinos became their primary users, not because they were popular, but because their size and weight made them practical for gaming tables. This wasn't exactly the dignified legacy Eisenhower deserved, having his memorial coin relegated to slot machine use. Contemporary criticism focused on the design's fundamental misunderstanding of both subjects. Eisenhower was known for his warm smile and grandfatherly demeanor, not rigid formality. The Apollo program represented peaceful exploration and scientific achievement, not aggressive conquest. By 1978, even the government admitted defeat. The Eisenhower dollar was quietly discontinued after 7 years of public rejection. No fanfare, no commemorative final strikes, just relief that the experiment was finally over. Modern collectors value Eisenhower dollars for their silver content and historical significance, but aesthetic appreciation remains rare. They represent what happens when good intentions meet poor execution, earning number 5 on our countdown. Number 4, the Old Spanish Trail half dollar, the commemorative coin that made experts weep. In 1935, the United States decided to commemorate the historic Old Spanish Trail with a special half dollar. This trade route connected Los Angeles to Santa Fe, facilitating commerce and cultural exchange across the American Southwest. The trail deserved a dignified tribute, a coin that captured the spirit of exploration and commerce. Instead, they created what Cornelius Vermeulen famously called the ugliest commemorative ever produced. When the most respected numismatic critic of the 20th century singles out your coin as the absolute worst, you've achieved something spectacularly bad. The design problems were immediately obvious to anyone with functioning eyeballs. The coin featured a map of the trail, which sounds reasonable until you see the execution. This wasn't a carefully crafted cartographic representation. It was a squiggly line that looked like someone had sneezed on the die. The geographical accuracy was questionable. The artistic merit was non-existent. But the map was just the beginning of this disaster. The designers apparently decided that empty space was the enemy, so they crammed every possible symbol, date, and inscription onto the coin's surface. A cow's head, a cross, various dates, Spanish text ... English text, and decorative elements that served no purpose except to create visual chaos. The composition defied every principle of good design. There was no focal point, no hierarchy, no breathing room. Elements fought each other for attention, like a crowd of tourists trying to take selfies at the same landmark. The result was a coin that hurt to look at, a numismatic migraine in silver. Professional artists studying this coin couldn't identify a single successful design element. The cow's head looked like it belonged on a cattle brand, not a commemorative coin. The cross appeared to be floating randomly in space. The text was cramped and barely readable. The overall effect was less historic trail commemoration, and more, everything must go clearance sale. Contemporary reaction was immediate and harsh. Numismatic publications struggled to find diplomatic ways to describe such obvious artistic failure. The American Journal of Numismatics wrote that the coin challenges conventional notions of commemorative design, which, in 1935, politeness meant this is absolutely terrible. Collectors avoided it from day one. Unlike other commemoratives that found devoted followings, the Old Spanish Trail half dollar was recognized as a mistake immediately. Dealers couldn't move them, collectors wouldn't buy them, and the mint was left with a warehouse full of artistic disasters. The irony was particularly painful. The Old Spanish Trail represented successful cultural exchange, economic prosperity, and historical significance. The coin commemorating this achievement became a symbol of failure, poor planning, and bureaucratic incompetence. Today, the Old Spanish Trail half dollar serves as a textbook example of how not to design commemorative coins. It's still cited in numismatic education as the ultimate cautionary tale, proof that good intentions require good execution. When you see one today, remember that it commemorates something genuinely important, making its artistic failure all the more tragic, and earning it number 4 on our countdown. Number 3, the State Quarters Program, where democracy met design disaster. In 1999, the U.S. Mint launched an ambitious program. 50 states, 50 designs, 50 chances to create numismatic masterpieces. What could go wrong? Everything. While some states created beautiful tributes to their heritage, others proved that giving everyone a voice doesn't guarantee good art. The concept was brilliant. Let each state showcase what made them unique on the reverse of Washington quarters. The execution, well, some states nailed it. Others created designs so bad they became legends of ugliness in collector communities. Michigan's quarter became the poster child for what not to do. The Great Lakes design was supposed to showcase the state's natural beauty. Instead, it looked like random blobs scattered across the coin. Collectors couldn't tell if they were looking at lakes, puddles, or the aftermath of a cartographic accident. The state outline added nothing except confusion, turning what should have been elegant geography into visual chaos. Ohio's Wright Flyer quarter confused everyone. The design commemorated aviation history, but the airplane looked like it was crashing rather than flying. The perspective was wrong, the proportions were bizarre, and the overall composition made the Wright brothers' achievement look like a disaster waiting to happen. Wyoming's cowboy design defied logic. The state motto, "Equal Rights," appeared alongside a bucking bronco and rider, but the relationship between these elements made no sense. Was the cowboy representing equal rights? Was the horse protesting inequality? The symbolism was so muddled that viewers gave up trying to understand it. The fundamental problem was the design process. Most states used committees, tourist boards, and bureaucratic processes rather than professional artists. The results showed. Cluttered compositions, awkward text placement, and symbols crammed together without artistic vision became the norm for the worst designs. Online forums exploded with criticism. Collectors created ugly quarter rankings, with Michigan, Ohio, and Wyoming consistently topping the worst lists. Reddit discussions regularly feature these quarters as examples of democratic design failure. The contrast with successful state quarters made the failures even more obvious. Kansas wheat stalks were elegant. Connecticut's charter oak was dignified. New Hampshire's old man of the mountain was iconic. These proved that good state quarter design was possible, making the bad ones inexcusable. Tourist board mentality created most disasters. Instead of focusing on artistic merit, committees tried to cram every state symbol into quarter-size spaces. The result was commemorative coins that looked like tourist brochures rather than currency. 50 states, 50 designs, and the worst ones proved that artistic vision can't be achieved by committee, earning them number 3 on our countdown. Number 2. The British 1969 large 50-pence coin, the heptagonal horror that made geometry ugly. In 1969, Britain decided their new 50-pence coin needed 7 sides, not 8, not 6, exactly 7. The Royal Mint's reasoning was typically British. It's different, therefore it must be better. The public's reaction was swift and brutal. What the hell is this thing? The heptagonal shape was the primary disaster. Coins are supposed to be round, or occasionally square if you're feeling adventurous. 7 sides served no practical purpose except to prove that British designers could count to 7. The shape made no sense functionally, aesthetically, or historically, but the shape was just the beginning. The artwork looked unfinished, like someone had submitted their rough draft and the Mint accidentally approved it. The design elements appeared to be floating in space, with no connection to each other or to any coherent artistic vision. The practical problems were immediate and obvious. The heptagonal shape meant these coins didn't stack properly, creating chaos in cash registers across Britain. Merchants complained that their coin sorting systems couldn't handle the odd shape. Bank tellers reported that the coins would jam in counting machines. Pockets became uncomfortable. The angular edges would poke through fabric, create awkward bulges, and generally make carrying British currency an unpleasant experience. Women's purses fared even worse. With the sharp corners catching on everything, the public backlash was unprecedented for British currency. Groups actually formed calling themselves anti-heptagonists, dedicated to protesting the ridiculous shape. This wasn't just collector criticism. This was ordinary citizens organizing against their own money. Newspapers had field days mocking the silly shape. The Daily Mail ran headlines about the coin that doesn't know what it wants to be. The Times published letters from readers suggesting that perhaps the Royal Mint should stick to shapes that actually worked. Vending machines across Britain started malfunctioning. The irregular shape confused mechanical coin acceptance systems, leading to frustrated customers and broken machines. Public transportation became problematic as ticket machines rejected the new coins randomly. International mockery followed quickly. Other nations pointed and laughed at Britain's geometric experiment. French newspapers suggested that perhaps the British had forgotten how to make proper coins. American numismatic publications use the 50 pence as an example of what happens when tradition meets misguided innovation. The government's response was classic British stubbornness. Official statements defended the modern design and innovative approach. Officials insisted that the public would grow to appreciate the sophisticated geometry. They were spectacularly wrong. The Royal Mint eventually admitted defeat quietly by making the later 50 pence coins smaller and less aggressively heptagonal, but the damage was done. The 1969 large 50 pence had established itself as a monument to the principle that different doesn't mean better. Today, these coins are valuable to collectors, not for their beauty, but as historical examples of design hubris. Earning number 2 on our countdown. And lastly, number 1, international curios, proof that artistic bankruptcy knows no borders. When bad coin design goes global, the results are spectacular. Forums like Numista and Reddit have become international galleries of numismatic shame, documenting worldwide ugliness that makes American mistakes look sophisticated. These coins prove that every nation, regardless of culture, history, or artistic tradition, can create currency disasters. The portrait disasters are legendary. Communist-era coins featured cartoonish leaders that looked more like caricatures than dignified representations. One Eastern European coin from the 1980s shows a political figure with such exaggerated features that collectors regularly mistake it for satire rather than official currency. African nations contributed their own unique disasters. Post-colonial coins often featured amateur artwork that looked like it was designed by someone who'd never seen professional currency. Proportions were wrong. Perspectives were impossible, and the overall execution suggested that artistic training was optional. Asian currencies provided bizarre Western interpretations that satisfied nobody. One coin attempted to blend traditional Eastern symbolism with Western portrait styles, creating a visual disaster that insulted both cultures simultaneously. The result was so bad that very lame design became the polite description on international forums. But the real treasures are the coins that defy explanation. A South American nation created a commemorative coin featuring what appears to be a stick figure riding a geometric shape. The symbolism remains a mystery decades later. Another country produced a coin with a portrait so abstract that numismatists still debate whether it's upside down. Reddit's coin communities have made these international disasters legendary. Posts titled, "What Were They Thinking?" regularly feature coins from around the world that challenge basic concepts of artistic competence. The comments sections become international competitions to find even worse examples. Design philosophy failures created most disasters. Political messaging trumped artistic merit in communist countries. Cultural symbols got lost in translation when designed by foreigners. Tourist appeal replaced aesthetic sense in developing nations desperate for international recognition. The modern problem is internet scrutiny. Before social media, these coins stayed within their national borders, embarrassing only local populations. Now, international collector communities preserve and share the worst examples, creating permanent records of artistic failure. Digital photography has made the details impossible to ignore. High-resolution images reveal every flaw, every proportional disaster, every evidence of artistic incompetence. Coins that might have been merely local embarrassments became international symbols of design failure. The lesson is universal. Good design transcends borders, but so does bad design. Cultural differences don't excuse artistic bankruptcy. Political importance doesn't justify ugly execution. And most importantly, having good intentions doesn't automatically create good art. These international curios prove that numismatic disasters are a global phenomenon, that artistic failure knows no nationality, and that sometimes the most important coins are the ones that teach us what never to do again. These coins prove that ugliness is truly in the eye of the beholder, except when it's so obvious that everyone agrees. From America's tombstone nickels to Britain's geometric nightmares, these numismatic disasters remind us that good design matters, even on something as simple as pocket change. Today, these coins survive as cautionary tales, collector curiosities, and proof that even governments can create disasters that last decades. Some are worth fortunes now, not because they're beautiful, but because they're so spectacularly ugly that they've become legendary. So next time you're holding pocket change, take a moment to appreciate decent design. Because as these 10 coins prove, it could always be much, much worse. Don't forget to subscribe for more numismatic nightmares. And here's another video about coins that actually got design right. See you next time, collectors.